Hey everyone, it's Justin. How's it going? Today I'd like to talk about the world reserve currency and its status, right? So, as of this moment, officially, US dollar is the world reserve currency, right? So what does that mean? Well, I don't want to make it too complicated, but basically, it is the number one most reliable, according to the government, safest currency in the world. Why? Well, that's a good question. So, the reason it is because essentially the US government will always pay its debtors, and we have the safest country because of our military. That's kind of a extremely oversimplified reasoning why it is we have the number one reserve currency. And right now, it's being challenged big time. Big time. For the longest time, I believe it was since the 70s or so, the largest oil producers in the world, namely Saudi Arabia, the OPEC people, they were required by the US in exchange for military protection to sell their oil and gas, etc., only in US dollars. So if China wanted oil and they went to Saudi Arabia would tell them, we will only accept US dollars and US dollar equivalents, namely treasuries, in exchange for this oil. Now, that's great for the US because then China has to sell all of its goods to the US in US dollars to gain the currency they need to buy the oil that they need to make the stuff to run their economy, right? Or they have to go buy it with their own currency. Hey, US or whatever country that has US dollars, we will buy dollars from you in our currency, the yuan. And China's just one example. So, where does China get that yuan? Well, it prints it literally from thin air. And what does that do? Their currency now becomes worth less. And in effect, it destabilizes their country at a small intensity for a prolonged amount of time. It's almost like being someone who always buys something with credit cards and then makes minimum payments on credit cards forever. You're never going to get very far ahead very well. Granted, the country China has actually been very successful in the last 20, 30 years and has grown huge. There's a lot of reasons for that. Now, in the last year and a half, 2 years, I think, something like that, since the big event in 2020 and some other financial instabilities and a major world conflict that started earlier this year, countries have said, namely Saudi Arabia, hey, everyone, we are no longer going to require US dollars to buy, or, in this scenario, to sell to you oil. And other countries came out and they said the same thing essentially, like Russia, hey, yeah, we're going to sell you our oil to Germany, Poland, other European countries, and we're only going to do it in rubles or gold, etc. Or we're going to turn off your oil and gas, and you're not going to have any. It was mostly gas, I believe, not just oil. So now, all these other countries that make stuff and sell it to the world, they're looking around and say, hey, wait a second, so we need gas, we need oil, but now we don't have to buy it with dollars. So how about instead we just sell our stuff in our own currency? Namely, what if China said, excuse me, hey, You can buy our widgets and our iPhones and whatever other stuff we sell. But we're not going to take dollars for it anymore. We're only going to take our own currency, the yuan, or gold. And how are they, going to get the dollars, or excuse me, the yuan, to buy the stuff from China? Well, now the U.S., or let's say the U.S., now U.S. citizens, in order to buy things from China in the future, this hasn't happened yet, will say, well, now I got to take my dollars, I got to exchange it for yuan, right? But they're no longer printing their currency. Their currency is actually deflating. So I now have to use more dollars to get less yuan. And their currency is becoming stronger. Now their currency is becoming stronger. The U.S. is now having a shortage of dollars, let's say, in order to buy that stuff. And it no longer actually becomes cheaper to buy stuff in China than it did before. And it now becomes a problem. The U.S. will become very, very poor. And so will other countries that used this system before. So Saudi Arabia, they came out a couple weeks ago and they doubled down on the statement and said, hey, we will now be selling our oil to China for the next 50 years. In a press conference, someone even asked, 50 years? That's forever. Why 50 years? And they said, actually, you know what? It's going to be forever. We're very, very confident in China. And why is this? We just lost the war in Afghanistan, right? If you want to call it war, occupation, whatever. We have been flopping so hard in so many ways. We've sold off we don't have any more refineries in the U.S. for oil to make things like diesel. We are in a tight position. We don't make any more stuff. And these other countries have figured out, even though we have this giant military, which is not as big compared to the other militaries anymore, can't bully ourselves into forcing the world having this currency. Because even if they did, let's say, the U.S. go and force people with the military to use dollars like they did to Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein, Libya, and Iraq, all they have to do is just not sell them any more stuff to the U.S. because the U.S. makes so little stuff and produces so little. And same with other Western countries. If you tried to mount a war against another country, it wouldn't even last that long because you would just not have the supplies you need to fight. It would be pointless. The current administration has drained the SPR, million barrels a day, all this year almost. We're historic lows, and the whole point of it is for if you go to war, you have a backup supply. We're cornered. We have no options. So the world's reserve currency is changing. It's not just going to be one anymore, the US's. It's going to be a shared global reserve currency system, and the US isn't going to have the ability to just print all of the cash at once anymore to bail out companies that go insolvent, to fund government programs that just launder and burn money. It's the gravy train is going to be over. Americans have lived the best experience ever of almost any nation in the history of the world, and the ride is coming to an end. That's really what's going on. And other than that, the U.S. doesn't want to give it up. And if you notice yesterday, something happened that's a little telling. And the whole last couple months should be a little telling. But Ukraine shot a missile into Poland and was claiming it was Russia who tried to, start attacking other NATO countries. It was found out very quickly Russia had nothing to do with it. The weapon was actually a Ukrainian weapon. It was like the S-300 missile defense system. And it looks like they're trying to make an excuse to fight because if they don't have a big war to force Russia and China back into U.S. dollar reserve currency system, then the U.S. is going to lose its number one spot in the world as the dominant superpower, numero uno, head honcho, along with Western countries like Europe, Canada, etc. So, that all being said, power struggle's real. This is a pretty big, chapter we're going into in world history. What's going to happen over this next 5-10 year period? How this is all going to play out, and it's for all of the chips, or at least a good chunk of them. That's my thoughts. World reserve currency. Leave a comment. Appreciate it. Y'all have a good day.